Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back with another video from Mother's Basement. It's the end of the year. What better way to celebrate than check out the worst anime of 2020? I mean, it's how the year's gone, really, hasn't it? Boo indeed. And in typical 2020 fashion, last day of the year, get hit with another copyright strike. So let's see how 2021 starts playing out. But anyway, let's check out the worst anime of 2020. I apologise for lighting. Last day of the year. I can't be bothered sorting it.
At last, we've reached the end of 2020. The world is breathing a huge collective sigh of relief.
Yes.
We survived it at all.
We got through it.
And here I am doing everything I possibly can to ensure I don't at the last minute. Because my end-of-year celebrations involve taking a grueling look back at the absolute worst that anime had to offer in the last 365
I probably avoided most of
days,
these.
and you can rest assured that this year's bad anime did its darndest to keep up with this year's, everything else. I think that's,
oh god.
like, the third time I've made some variation of that joke this month. Please forgive me. I'm very tired. And you're about to see why. The fifth worst anime of 2020 is Dragon's Dogma.
Apparently this is
a show
awful.
about which
Yeah.
I already spent, Jesus, how long?
So we don't need to go too into it
then.
then.
Have very little left to say.
37 minutes.
I could point out that there are a lot of huge plot holes in it, like Ethan and Hannah pass through Don't Do Drugs or the Hydra will Get You Down in episode 4.
Oh wow.
Heading to the mountain where the dragon is, but then the whole reason
The animation
they
looks
help the
really
soldiers
weird as
fight
well.
the Lich in episode 5
Jeez.
is to learn where the dragon is. It's really obvious that they wrote the episodes out of sequence and did some very slight doctoring to fit them together into something
no.
resembling an arc.
That does look
which makes
awful.
the plot feel even more incoherent and scattered than I just told you Shironeko Project Zero Chronicle is. But, I don't know, that doesn't really affect the viewing experience as much.
You can just
as
tell
any
straight
other
away
stuff
that that's
I already
trash.
talked about in my video. And in summing up why Dragon's Dogma is bad here, I'd just be saying the same stuff again, but shorter, which sounds like about as much fun for both of us as writing a list of plot holes. So instead, I'm just gonna fill a bit of time complaining about the other bad anime that I had to watch to figure out what was actually bad enough to go on this list.
Oh.
Shachibato, President It's Time for Battle, is a gacha game comedy anime that tries and fails to spoof its genre. Like many other fantasy comedy anime these days, it's a series of
like
very
Konosuba
obvious jokes about
got that
standard
in the
RPG
bag.
tropes with a very slight twist. In this case, what if adventuring companies were like actual companies?
Oh,
so now
God.
the party leader is also a CEO, and in addition to keeping track of equipment and strategy, he's got to manage finances and business strategy. That sounds like it could potentially be
great.
funny. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some real gold to be mined in the insane.
Oh yeah, Gretzko
corporate
really good at
bureaucracy.
doing that.
But that kind of comedy kind of relies on keen attention to detail and an eye for the subtle absurdities and contradictions baked into corporate systems. And this is an anime that thinks it makes sense to pay your inheritance tax up front instead of, you know, out of your inheritance.
What?
So instead of anything clever, the
Okay.
puzzles in dungeons are just replaced with quizzes about business facts, while the bosses are like...
Oh, that sounds so much fun,
bosses.
jeez.
You get it? Like there's a Cerberus with a management head that fights its subordinate head. Ha ha!
Wow, that's so funny.
The jokes
Oh,
suck,
God.
the characters suck, the story makes no sense and sucks, and the collectible waifu designs are all almost
Bland.
cute, but just a little too busy and over-designed. Like, does not Hotaru really need two different colors of hair, wheel, clip, and
Yeah,
a
what are they
headband?
about?
Does not Miku's overall skirt
Very
really
Hatsune
need
Miku
a
looking
horn
there.
cut out right over her crotch?
They're very cut and
Okay,
paste from different
I've talked
animes,
about
aren't they?
that
All
one
those designs
way
right
too
there.
long.
God.
Lightning round time. I'm a big theater geek. Steampunk is my favorite thing, and the musical theater steampunk robot combat review of Shin Sakura Taizen the animation still managed to bore me to tears.
Oh dear.
Also, the animation's a good subtitle because they reuse the same animation a lot of times with different CG models.
It's very
And the
junky
CG
as well, isn't
looks
it?
bad also.
Yeah.
Boom, got him. Next.
Boom, got 'em.
Shadowverse
Oh,
has
I tried
every
watching this
problem
anime.
with card game
Oh my
anime
God,
I listed in my
Shadowverse is
video of the same name,
awful.
but worse. The
And it's still
characters are
ongoing.
totally
It's like
flat,
it's
the
like
duels have
20
no
of something
strategy,
episode.
But everyone talks like playing a big monster is a stroke of genius, and whoever thought putting your smartphone into a wrist holster was in any way
God,
a
so
substitute
clever.
for the inherent radness of dual discs should Learn from that mistake.
Mm.
Gotta go faster. Kings rate the animation. World building makes no sense, exposition dumps are way too long, and that sucks because the action's actually kinda decent when it does happen. Super HX arrows. Got my summer ones to watch demonetized, so I hate it for very personal reasons. But also, it's not funny or sexy, and that's kind of a problem for soft.
It has to be funny and sexy.
Listeners, absolutely gorgeous, a true aesthetic
Oh mate, yeah, like
experience.
the animation on this looks boss, so it's not good.
But also absolutely no substance to back up all that style, and
Grim,
in some
'cause that
places
looks
it's
boss.
kind of an insult to the classic rock to which it pays tribute. Real big disappointment, still more fun than anything else in this video.
Oh.
Lastly,
Oh
Tommy
dear.
Lee. Look at the poster, now look at the anime. Straight up deceptive advertising. But even if the girls
Oh,
were cute
Jeff.
and the animation was good, cute girls doing cute things, baseball edition's already been done, and this adds nothing new to the table from a character perspective or a sports anime perspective. It is just plain boring.
Damn.
Alright, that's enough time filling. Let's move on to number 4. Generally speaking, I stick to full-length series with these lists.
Erectile.
It doesn't really feel fair
Oh,
comparing
I'm guessing
those
that's not the
directly
title of
to
the anime.
comedy or edgy time
I
slot
thought we could have an
fillers,
anime called
and
Erectile
longer
Dysfunction
shows
something or
also
other.
just give me more to say. But when their episodes hit the 12-minute mark, shorts can deliver more substantial stories worth critiquing.
Yes,
And I
if they cram it all in there.
really couldn't let Peter Grill and the Philosopher's Time, the eugenics-fueled NTRM anime, pass without some kind of comment. Though, to avoid getting this video demonetized, I will have to choose my comments very carefully.
Yes, that's
I
always the
should
way.
explain what that last terrible sentence meant. Peter Grill is the strongest human warrior to ever war, and
Of course.
after definitively proving his might in a grand fighting tournament, he's got only one goal on his mind: to marry his impossibly pure childhood sweetheart, Luvelia
Of course.
Senpai, and live out the rest of his days with her happily. Her father, the
But what's
adventurer's
the twist
guildmaster,
here?
has some doubts about Peter. And despite being framed as the villain, he is absolutely correct in that assessment. Because immediately after he wins the tournament and makes his engagement to Luvelia official, Peter is approached by a pair of Oni girls, Lisa and Mimi,
Okay.
whose goal is to have the strongest baby in the world.
Oh my god,
which they
no.
think only Peter can give them because they have a medieval understanding of heritability. Then again, this loser clearly didn't get where he is with hard work or discipline, so maybe they're onto something. It only takes one brush against their crudely animated boobs for Peter to abandon all of his morals and values and betray the love of his life. Which is not a great starting place for a hero we're meant to root for. Or
No, not at all. How are you
I
meant to
think the
stick up for this
series
guy
wants us
now?
to pity him, actually. It constantly frames its jokes.
That's awful. And we're meant to feel bad for him.
Look at this poor Dumbo. He just wants to live a happy
He just had
life
sex with
with
two,
pure
like,
cinnamon
horned,
roll
big boobed
but all
monsters
these
after getting
sleuths
engaged, and now it's
chewing
like,
his
oh, but
bones.
it's not his fault.
And the funny
Oh my
the thing about
god.
that is, if you don't want to cheat on your fiance, you just
don't.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
the
my
show
god.
fades out like he's blacking out to emphasize how he's losing control to the horny, but he's not even intoxicated in a lot of these scenes. He just doesn't have any self-control
Oh my
and
god.
is making bad decisions.
Terrible character
And it is
writing.
not
What is
funny
this
to
about?
watch a guy feel sorry for himself over that.
No, that's
It's
bad.
just irritating.
Oh my
To be
god.
clear, Peter's not at fault for every one of his escapades. There's this elf girl who puts a curse on his, you can guess what, that can only be cured by, you can guess how.
Oh my god.
And that is a crime, so yeah, I don't think it's funny, but I do feel really bad for him on that count.
That one.
She's a monster. What's that? She's a recurring waifu?
Oh no.
I'm supposed to like her character?
How are you meant to like
Ugh,
any of them?
You kind of fucked that one up. Harem comedies are ensemble comedies. Ensemble comedies rely on having likable, or at least relatable and interesting casts of characters.
Yes,
and
but if they're all
I'm
trying to
sorry,
actually
but absolutely
bang
none
the
of these
main character when
beautiful
he's
excuses
engaged
for
and they're all
human beings
nasty,
fit that
ew.
bill even slightly. Well, maybe Piglet? The gag of an ugly orc being hot to humans is tired, but not entirely unfunny.
No,
Her
there's
insecurities are
some jokes that could be
relatable.
there.
She's got real feelings for Peter, for some reason, and she's even okay with him being poly, which is clearly what he wants and could have and enjoy instantly if he just stopped lying to the very nice lady who he clearly
Oh, so he doesn't
love
even
enough
tell
to be
her.
faithful to.
Oh my god,
And I
it's
think
awful.
that's the real problem here. I mean, underneath the elements of the story that I personally find to be distasteful or straight up insulting for what they seem to be implying about my gender, the whole joke of the show is premised on Peter not getting the thing he wants because of the things he does. But he wouldn't do the things he does if he actually wanted the thing he wants as much as he thinks he does. So he's not actually suffering. He's just doing bad things with zero consequences and then complaining. And that's
Such a
not
weird
funny.
idea for a
It's
show.
also not sexy, and that's kind of a problem for softcore parody porn. I can at least give this show one.
It's not sexy
The
either,
Crunchyroll
damn.
subs contain an absolute treasure trove of creative and varied compounds.
Did she just say, let me get your junk
Peter's
spunk?
genetic material is the central plot MacGuffin, so it only makes sense that
I've come to acquire the nectar of your nevers. We came here for a dose of your meat sauce. Jesus, it doesn't stop.
But at the very least, if you watch this anime, you will walk away from it with several dozen delightful new ways to say baby batter. And that
Yeah,
ain't
just
nothing,
seen 3.
which by default leaves this hanging above the next week's
Jesus.
entries. What I'm saying is, the real Demon Souls starts here.
Oh.
I don't think that generic and cringy are particularly
There was a
helpful
Demon Souls
words to
reference there,
use in
babe.
criticism. Lots of good things are emblematic of their genre, and cringe is very much in the skin of the cringer. Yet, I don't really know what else to call our third place winner, Shironeko
Winner.
Project Zero Chronicle, which I
You
can
can just
only describe as
tell
an
it looks
extremely
it looks
faithful
trash.
adaptation of your teenage DeviantArt gallery. It can be your angle or your devil, and either way, it comes brandishing a very big, very silly sword. That said, it is also based on a real thing. Shironeko Project is a 2014 free-to-play action RPG that hit big in Japan, but
I find
not
most
so
of these
much anywhere
RPG
else,
mobile
partly owing
games
to
that are
a
made
bullshit
into
lawsuit
anime
from
just
Nintendo
tend to
over
just
the control
flop.
scheme, which was sort of like the wrist strap thumb
But that's
pad
why I was,
controls in Super Mario
like,
64
surprised with Princess
DS, but
Connect.
It's really obvious that they were just trying to help
I watched it just to check it out, and I was like, oh, actually, this is actually quite fun.
And frankly, all
Does
of
not
that is
happen
way
often.
more interesting than the anime itself, which is not a straight adaptation of, but rather a prequel to that game. A chronicle of its world, starting from zero, if you will. Now, I haven't played the original game, but as far as I can gather, its backstory goes a little something like this.
Okay.
Long ago, the world was split between a kingdom of light in the sky and a kingdom of darkness
My
on
God,
the
Jeff.
barren earth below. An endless war raged between the guardians of light and the demon army until one day
This story
the
has
prince
never
of
been told
darkness
ever
met
before.
the queen of light, and they fell in love. Seeking peace, the dark prince took up arms against his king, and their love that should not have been threw the world out of balance and reshaped the very land and sky.
My
Did you get all that?
God.
Okay, now imagine me saying it all again, changing nothing, only so slowly
Oh, right.
that it takes me 5 hours to finish.
Damn, it's such a simple story.
That's it.
Right, okay, damn.
Okay, I'm being a little unfair. There are a few wrinkles of nuance that I left out, like the Land of Darkness has crap agriculture and is under constant threat of monster attacks, and the prince is an
Never seen
orphan
that before.
monster attack survivor who wins the right of succession through a series of duels that sound way more interesting than they actually are.
Oh.
Only take 3 episodes to get through. Also, the Land of Light is sort of hoarding all the good resources, so things aren't quite so black and white, except they are, because the King of Darkness is a huge dick with mind control powers, and that's literally the only reason a war's happening. Also, the Queen and Prince each
He
have
controls
a companion
mind.
who's
He must
secretly in
fight.
love with them to help stretch out that side of the story, and yeah, okay, now I've really covered everything. This anime is almost 100% padding, divided 70-30 between drawn-out conversations and bad jokes that mean nothing and go nowhere, and flashy JRPG boss fights that mean nothing, go nowhere,
right,
and
okay.
barely have any continuity or choreography to speak of, with any remaining time filled in by flashbacks to those other things. I would say it feels like watching grass grow, except that is literally a thing this anime makes us do. See,
Oh.
the kingdoms of light and dark form a brief alliance
What?
to fight this god of destruction called Baal, which gives the prince as an envoy and the queen, along with their respective entourages, a chance to get to know each other. And they spend that time doing a very unfunny outfit swap sketch, eating food that the White Kingdom doesn't put enough seasoning on, which is almost a funny joke by accident, and wandering through the mountains in an herb picking contest. And that last activity, I shit you not, takes an entire episode.
Wow.
During which the only conflict that happens is Green Big Titty Demon Lady and Royal Knight Captain Guy get a bit jealous of the main couple, and an irritating kid goes missing for 2 minutes, but he's fine. While looking for him, the prince knocks the queen into a pond, resulting in what's clearly
where they're picking
intended to be fan service.
grass.
Then they eat some tempura. That's it. I did not skip anything. A significant portion of the episode's script is just names of herbs. And,
wow.
I mean, I like slice of life bullshit. I could put up with that if the characters were
interesting
characters,
there we go, yeah.
If any of it went anywhere. Like, say, if the herbs or food or outfits that get swapped, or maybe the relationships that develop between the characters in these episodes had even the slightest tangible impact on the rest of the plot.
Damn.
But they don't.
Oh my
After
god.
a couple episodes of fucking around, the King of Darkness just hits the make a plot happen button, and the prince's buddy Adele is consumed by darkness and pulls a euphanator, only somehow even less narratively satisfying. So the prince has to chop him in half. Then the prince gets arrested and kicked in the face for the crime of saving the queen's life in front of everyone.
Wow, okay.
Royal Guard Captain dude immediately forgets all of his character development up to that point and starts being racist against demons again, even though it's really obvious there's some black magic fuckery going on with his former friend. So it's up to the queen to bust the prince out of jail and feed him some lines that would make Padme and Anakin cringe.
Light isn't all there is. There's darkness in the world, too. Both of them can bring
then he
peace.
goes back to the Kingdom of Darkness to confront the king. No, he just goes and fights some random monsters in a canyon. The army of darkness invades the realm of light while he's busy doing that. Knight Captain Guy goes on a MacGuffin hunt to fix the queen's depleted magic circuits and fill time. And then, after teleporting back to town, the prince finally gets taken to the castle to fight Adele, who says, "You really thought killing me would be enough to make me die?" Only completely unironically. And then turns into a full demon. After whipping his ass twice, the prince grows wings and flies back to the Kingdom of Light.
Of course he does.
Somehow, arriving just a few seconds too late to stop the queen from triggering the progenitor rune self-destruct protocol or whatever, and ending the world as we know it. And at no point during any of this do any of the characters we just spent several excruciating episodes watching get to know each other, interact, or even talk at all.
Terrible.
Honestly, I could barely follow the last few episodes of this show, and
Why
not for lack of trying.
even have
It's
attempted
just
slice of life
that all
episodes
over the
if it's
place.
not going to
Like,
affect the
there's
character
this bit
development
near
in the
the end
future?
where the queen runs inside, leaving her mage
No
friend
sense.
behind
Makes
to
no
fend
sense.
off the King of Darkness. Then he engulfs her in dark energy, and we zoom into her mind, where suddenly she's consumed by thoughts of jealousy toward Iris, the queen. Then she wakes up and claims she's not corrupted, but she's actually telling the truth. She keeps fighting the bad guys, and never betrays her friends. It never comes up again, and that whole scene did absolutely nothing but
Pointless.
fill
A lot of
time,
pointless writing.
despite being an episode-ending cliffhanger.
Oh
and
my
that's time
God.
that could have been spent. I don't know, there's nothing in this story that's really worth expanding on, but a bunch of characters just sort of teleport around to places with no rhyme or reason in the climax, and also, despite some Sakuga in the middle of a few fights, all of the conclusions of those fights are a confusing mishmash of fast cuts and incoherent choreography, so there were definitely less terrible uses for it. Actually, they made a really big deal out of Adele catching feelings for the mage girl, so maybe, like, they could have done something with her trying to pull him out of the darkness, or them saving each other, or...
Isn't that annoying? They have a lot of interesting points and they do nothing with it.
Instead of having that duty fall to the prince's swordmaster butler guy, who never met the captain or any of the Kingdom of Light characters prior to that moment, and thus has no way to meaningfully engage with any of them beyond trading cliche anime fight one-liners. Looking back, I actually cannot think of a single meaningful plot thread that connects from the start of this anime to the end of this anime, besides the romance thing, which is barely resolved in the most contrived tragedy imaginable. Not that there's
That's
much
amazing.
to resolve. The only thing these lovers have in common are their jobs, a general agreement that war is bad,
Yes.
and the aforementioned propensity for making me cringe out of my skin.
None of this is edited. Right, okay. Oh my god.
That is, to quote Yazzie, some real AMV tier shit. But at least it's not boring or confusing, unlike pretty much everything else in this train
That's some
wreck of a show.
AMV
In
tier
second
shit.
place, we've got an anime that I was actually kind of excited for after watching its first episode, though it only took about a minute's worth of the second to completely dash those hopes.
What's this?
As anyone who saw last year's list knows, I was a bit of a stage magic dweeb back in elementary school, and on top of that, I've always had a strong affinity for heist movies, so there's long been a special place in my heart reserved for Kaito or Phantom Thief characters,
Right.
masters of disguise and illusion who use stealth, stage pageantry,
And cunning.
misdirection
Yeah.
to lift precious treasures right out from under the noses of wealthy villains and incompetent cops, playing a delicate game of wits and planning, generally against
I feel like this is
rival
building
great
up to a
detective who is their only true
lame
match,
character
where
here.
the slightest miscalculation can spell disaster for either side. Well, that's how it's supposed to go, anyway. And when resident protag Kun and illusion enthusiast Makoto goes to apprentice under a master magician in his kooky, secret-filled mansion, only to discover that he, his wife, and their daughter Hatana are actually master thieves,
Oh
Hatana
my
Illusion
God.
does seem to be moving in that direction. But sadly, that's the only misdirect this anime ever successfully pulls off.
Oh.
Hatana hails from a long line of mages who can imbue ordinary objects with magical abilities, including sentience. What these artifacts do depends somewhat on the emotional state of the mage who enchants them, but mostly on whatever anime or hentai the author was
Oh,
watching
God.
when he wrote that part. Now, sometimes bad people use these artifacts to do
Bad things, right,
Like,
okay, yes, as
mob
normal
boss
stories
helping
go.
His daughter cheat in a violin competition is a real plot point in this
Oh.
anime. And there's a sizable criminal underground centered around the artifacts, too, so Hatana's parents must use their touring magic show as a cover to steal them back.
My
Sounds
god.
like a decent basis for some good old-fashioned phantom thievery, right? Not that far off from DN Angel stealing cursed art shtick,
Huh.
except those artifacts are also the Phantom Thief tools, and their powers largely supersede the need for any conventional illusions. So our heroes
Oh.
don't actually need to be particularly clever or tricky to
They
do
just
fancy
use the
thief
artifacts
stuff.
to do what they
And
need
the
to do.
villains all have access to the exact same magic equipment, so yeah, this isn't actually a Phantom Thief anime at all.
No.
It's just a regular shonen battle thing
With
a
magic.
burlesque-esque aesthetic where the characters sometimes run around in the dark for a few minutes before the fights start, which isn't necessarily a flaw in itself. The part of me that was looking forward to seeing a clever mix of stagecraft and strategy feels pretty let down, doubly so when the anime makes allusions to Makoto learning
Ooh.
sleight of hand from We Have Major Armstrong at home.
Oh,
and
that does look
using
like Major
illusions in
Armstrong.
battle, but doesn't actually explain how any of those tricks work, so functionally it's just a way to let him do anime
Everything
stuff
just
while
happens.
The plot turns the powers off. But regular shonen battle things can still be a lot of fun, even if they don't satisfy my very personal craving for realistic sleight of hand. Emphasis on can be.
Can be.
Because this one is completely basic and brain dead. The key to every single robbery, I refuse to call them heists, in Hatana Illusion, is just using more force than the other guy.
Just
Or
who's
the
stronger.
other blonde lady in Bondage Gear,
My
since
magic is
that's
better than your magic.
literally every antagonist in this entire thing. They do bring in a fat blonde lady in an evening gown to shake things up a bit as an early minor villain, but then she gets an artifact that lets her turn into an Evangelion ninja gimp.
Oh.
Didn't say it was a cohesive aesthetic. And from that point forward, her tubby form is used exclusively to make unfunny jokes about her wanting to fuck the house. Or, to be specific, the spirit embodying the concept of a butler that the magic house projects to serve its inhabitants. It's complicated.
Okay, yeah.
Actually, no, it's not. It's just incredibly convoluted. Mostly because they just seem to be making this shit up as they go along, and there's absolutely no aesthetic or functional consistency between anything in this power system. One artifact is a futuristic box that makes lightning. Another's a pair of mind-reading sunglasses that make your hair fall out when you use them.
What?
One's a transforming maid uniform. And then
Wow.
there's a ball that negates all other superpowers at no apparent cost. Let's not even get started.
So you can have mind-reading glasses that make you lose your hair, but you can have a ball that stops everyone else using magic and it doesn't do anything to the user. Okay.
Artifacts can be anything and do anything. Sometimes they take a physical toll on their user. Sometimes
They
the
just
writers
don't?
forget they're supposed to do that.
Right.
It's difficult to make an anime power system that feels less cohesive, coherent, and consistent than Stan's, but by Jove, they've pulled it off here, and it makes the battles feel like a mess even without the janky, incomprehensible animation. Though that does not help. Neither does the incredibly lame arsenal that our heroes come packing. Hatana's signature weapon is a scarf.
Scarf, yeah, I can see that already.
Don't worry, honey, we have Trigger Anime at Home style weapons. She calls it Muffkun, which pairs nicely in several ways with Makoto's Smile Stick, a dinky little magic wand that transforms into a bigger but no less dinky card captor.
Oh my god, it does look very card capture, doesn't it? Oh my god.
Do literally whatever the plot needs it to at that moment.
Right.
So can Muffkun, for that matter. So if you were looking forward to the characters, say, adding to their arsenals with the artifacts they steal over the course of the story,
They don't do that?
don't.
Right.
That would be too cool for this. The other thing is, while Makoto's able to instantly master his artifact with basically no effort, Hatana, despite having had hers for way longer, can barely use it and is constantly fucking up, getting in over her head and needing to be rescued.
Well, yeah,
By
she's
Makoto, of course. That is what happens.
the female
in
character
3
that
out of
needs
the
to be
5
saved.
robberies that she participates in this 12-episode Phantom Thief anime, with her name in the title. For what it's worth, there are only 8 thefts in the series total, and our heroes are the targets of 3 of them.
Oh.
They get bamboozled and out-stealthed more frequently than they do that to the bad guys, which is the opposite of what I came here for.
Yeah, you want to see them pull off heists and robberies and stuff, but it's happening to them, okay.
A rich childhood friend to gain access to their mansion. Even though a few episodes later we learn she has a magical claim to the property, which allows her to come and go as she pleases, and also evict our heroes and take their stuff. Like I said, convoluted. Anyway, after Auntie
Made
robs
up as
them
they go
the first
along.
time, Hatana chases her to the docks to get back what she stole, immediately fucks everything up, and has to be saved by Makoto. Now, the other 2 times she gets damseled are pretty much identical in how they're written to a frankly eerie degree. A mean older lady in Hatana's family tells her that if she steals a particular artifact, her mom will come back home. She just believes them, despite having been
It's not like show me any
betrayed by each
proof
of
or
those
anything,
women
okay.
in a previous episode and having negative reasons to trust them. It then turns out that the predictable liar lied and it was a trap, and then Hatana gets bondaged up in a T-pose and moans and grunts a lot while the definitely not an audience insert character fights to save her.
Right.
Now, personally, I don't find this to be particularly engaging or satisfying storytelling. I got bored with it around my 30th video game or so. Your mileage may vary depending on your tolerance for the sexist cliche, so cliche that it's a cliche to call it a sexist cliche. And to be fair, there is an argument to be made that Hatana's growth as a phantom thief and person is the central arc of the story, and thus we need to see her fail a couple times before she can succeed. But when she falls for the exact same trick twice in episodes 4 and 12, you have made the arc align, and that argument falls apart along with the entire story. Clearly, despite being the title character, Hatana's mainly here as a lingerie and top hat clad accessory for Makoto's
Yes, it does seem, just looking at all the clips I'm seeing right now, like she seems just side character, gets captured.
Most of the supporting characters are girls, many of whom have feelings for Makoto,
Of course.
including his apparently male stage magic rival, who is revealed to be Mulaning it when he has to rip her shirt off for for medical reasons.
Oh.
Says the show that had its characters all go to the pool to teach the neat hacker elementary school Emoto, who makes a point of saying she doesn't wear underwear, how to swim, while they were in the middle of being evicted, with the woman who was evicting them, who is also wearing a bikini. Yup, sure, there was definitely no other way they could have dealt with that bullet wound in her arm. Okay,
What?
yeah, it's pretty obvious what kind of anime this really is, or if it wasn't, it will be when I say that it's based on a light novel, not a manga, and it is not a very good one of those. Almost all of the plot stuff I've talked about so far is packed into 10-minute mountains of content, spread 2 or 3 episodes apart atop a vast, unshifting open plain of characters exchanging tedious exposition over tea, and harem anime cliches that were already tired when Love Hina stole them from Ranma back in the 90s. Like, Hatana just hates boys, for no reason except that's the trope you do when a boy lives at a girl's big house in an anime. Sure, the boys at her school are typical annoying harem background characters, so I can see why she wouldn't like them. But they're not borderline rapists trying to beat her into dating.
Yeah, like show us some sort of horrible backstory that gives a
Hatana
reasoning as to be so extreme with it.
Butler in training, cleaning the tub for her and her friends after they were caught in the rain, and instinctively beats the shit out of him for it, it just makes her come off as, if you'll pardon the derogatory language, a huge bitch. She's not likable, her outbursts are not endearing, and they do not give her character depth. She's just needy, incompetent, and mean to the people who try to help with those things. But she's got
unlikable
big titties, and she's tsundere, so we're just expected to like her. And that's pretty much par for the course as far as characterization goes in this series. Hatana's aunt is just needlessly cruel until suddenly she's not. It's really obvious that she was supposed to be a central villain, and
can't wait to see what number 1 is.
About her motivation and
what awful animes did I watch this year?
Hatana's friend,
Shadowverse I definitely watched, but what else?
The main harem girl's green-haired friend from
Noblesse was
and their maid, who's
pretty poop.
also the student council president, but also their surrogate older sister, because she's
also
and their mom took in as a child slave. Don't think about it too much. Is also an otaku Rubicon sex pest, which is not the most appealing combination of characteristics, and also not played for any successful laughs. She doesn't even drop any decent references. Old man Jeeves just says, "Is this like one of your Japanese animes?" to her every time the show does a cliche. And then the younger sister is just kinda there. A boring, box-ticking, angelic Emoto non-entity. She really loves her biological sister and Makoto Nisan, of course, but also she's good at everything and always happy to help. Technically, she has flaws and brings about conflict. She doesn't want to go to school for a bit, and it takes fucking 3 episodes to fix that. But the reason behind it is that she's got a personal problem that she doesn't want her sister to worry about, so that's not a flaw, actually. It's just one more way she's better than everyone. She is not a
some
character.
Actual thing going on.
Don't think that I didn't notice that literally every female character in the show's secondary motivation is wanting to be more like Hatana's mom. That's some real lazy shit. This whole show is just a whole load of pandering nothing. And because it's so goddamn ugly and poorly animated, it can't even try to pander successfully. Most of the time, these characters barely even look human, let alone attractive, so it kind of goes without saying that every single attempt at fan service
just doesn't work, right?
Embarrassingly
Damn.
If it's not straight up creepy. But even if the art and animation was as detailed as it needs to be for that sort of show, the script would still be 90% exposition, the characters would still be boring and irritating, the fights would still suck, and the Phantom Thief elements would still be woefully underutilized. It is just disappointments all the way down with this one.
So she's reminding me of the girl from Darwin's Game, but like
anime this year
not
that
blonde.
Managed to be even worse.
Okay.
And even more disappointing, though not cumulatively. It's more the sort of disappointment that hits you all at once. How would you feel if if I told you there's an anime about a trio of Sengoku warriors, a razor wire wielding ninja, a club brandishing battle monk, and a mighty samurai who dual wields a katana and
This sounds
broadsword,
sick.
who get
Okay.
whisked away to modern-day Tokyo in the middle of a zombie-ish apocalypse
Whoa.
and must team up with a group of soldiers and survivors, and some escaped convicts, to protect mankind's last hope from the mutant monstrosities.
Sounds amazing.
Sounds pretty rad,
Yeah.
right? How could that not be dope? Well, these are the mutants,
Oh,
these are the
God.
samurai, and this is what the Sakuga looks like.
Jeez.
The worst anime of 2020 is called Chibi-8, and
Chibi-8.
Chibi-hate it. You're
Ho, ho,
probably
ho.
starting to agree with me already, just from that immense letdown, but trust me, it gets much worse.
Really?
Honestly, I don't even know where to begin with this one. Every aspect of it is bad. Writing, direction, voice direction, animation, compositing, CGI, sound design, even the OP is atrocious. Like, they clearly just cobbled together a bunch of test animations and random show footage over some background music. So, I guess
lazy.
if everything's terrible, it makes sense to start with the parts that aren't. That song may not work as an OP, but it does feature some pretty skilled shamisen-ing, courtesy of the Yoshida brothers, who also scored the We Would Like to Play commercials. Fun fact.
Oh, that is a fun
background
fact.
art is very detailed and technically impressive, painting a vivid picture of a ruined, overgrown Japan, and it's got some pretty dope concept art, too. Though that is also the root of a lot of its problems. Yoshitaka Amano is a brilliant watercolor illustrator, best known for his work on Final Fantasy, who painstakingly crafts surreal, intricate dreamscapes with inimitably fine brushwork. I can imagine someone with a keen eye for art looking at his and asking, why can't all anime look like that? The answer is that animation involves a lot of people drawing a lot of drawings in roughly the same style very quickly. It is an art form built on rapid imitation. So when you base animation on designs by an inimitable artist who takes a lot of time to add a lot of tiny details and subtle color gradients to the things he draws, you're gonna run into some issues. And the thing is, those are known issues. Amano's a famous dude. Over the years, a lot of studios have tapped his talents for anime. Out of those, only a few movies and OVAs, which typically have higher budgets and looser schedules than TV anime, have even come close to emulating his style, and all of them trade off for it with stiff, awkward animation. There's a reason the heroic legend of Arslan only came to TV after Hiromu Arakawa redesigned all the characters for her manga adaptation. What I'm saying is, there is no excuse for an anime production working with Amano in 2020 to be unprepared for the unique difficulties his distinctive designs present.
Because he's tried it
and
before,
to be fair,
right,
the
okay.
Chibi-8 production committee had a solution. Director Masahiko Komino previously translated Hirohiko Araki's notoriously fiddly designs from Stardust Crusaders to animation, so in theory, he is the man for the job.
Yeah, should be.
In
If he's managed to do
practice, though,
JoJo's,
all of the
jeez.
characters in Chibi-8 just look like JoJo rejects with weirdly thin lips. And now, as a bonus,
That is
we
interesting,
get to see
actually.
how
I
those
got,
sort of
the
designs
guy with the
animate
thing on his
without
face.
any of the
Very
heavily
DOS
stylized
look
effects
from
and
him.
transitions that define the JoJo brand. Answer: they don't.
Aww.
Also, Chibi-8's
There you go,
solution
very
for emulating
Dio
subtle
when he's
watercolor
full-on
gradients of Amano's
emo
paintings
vampire
is
mode at
to
the end of
slap
part
the purple
3.
green Handshaker's vomit filter over everything. Love that. There is not a single frame of this show that looks good or even decent. And
Damn.
in motion, it's straight up unwatchable. Half the time, the camera is jammed up some dude's nose, pointed away from whatever's moving, and every animation we can actually see is slow, awkward, and devoid of impact. Whether it be
Gotta get those
hand-drawn
arms moving
or
to let them know
terrible
they're
CG.
running.
And the worst part of it all is, most of the designs they made these sacrifices for aren't even that good.
Damn.
The two main characters, Kathleen and Sensui, are decently distinct and Amano-esque.
Yeah, they look alright.
Then the group Lancer, Kenroku, is
He does look like Lancer.
literally just Lancer, but a ninja. Kathleen's mom is just an anime mom. Dr. Yoshinaga fell out of some random ER Otome game, and the goons
He looks
who
like a
trouble the
lot of
group through
characters.
The story's midsection are just the first things you imagine when you hear the words Yakuza, Mafia, Ninja, and Otaku. I guess Punk Pole Vaulter's a pretty new one. Of course, we can't talk about ugly characters without at least touching on the titular monsters, the Gibia,
They look
nocturnal
awful.
arachno-reptilian
Oh my god.
things that make more of themselves by stabbing humans with their mutagenic stingers. And when I describe them with words, that sounds cool. Resident Evil mangaka Naoki Serizawa certainly has the creature design chops to make them look cool, too. And maybe they would have, if they weren't optimized for the GameCube. But even if they weren't, even if Komino had figured out how to work with Amino's designs effectively, or they just hired an actual animator to design the characters
instead of doing CGGs,
Chibi-8 would still be one of the worst anime I have ever watched. Series writer, creator, producer, planner, supervisor, and production committee chief Ryo Aoki's previous anime script credits include Bonjour, Sweet Love Patisserie, a mediocre short-form reverse harem ONA made to sell an unreleased mobile game.
So it sounds like
the project draft for Endride, which might just be the worst anime based on a released mobile game, and that's it. That's literally all he's ever done, as far as any of the sources I can find tell me. And boy, does it show. Chibi-8's script is straight up unsalvageable. This is a show that thinks the best and also only way to acquaint us with a character's personality and motivations is to have them directly tell us what makes them tick in a video confessional at the start of each episode.
Oh my god.
You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry. That's also how it delivers most of the exposition about its apocalypse scenario.
I mean, it's true. We should see as the audience.
Clips, just in case it wasn't hacky and
we learn through watching through action and character interaction.
Also heavily implies that Kathleen is recording her confessional while the Gibia infection sets in. Hearing the sound of dripping water is the first symptom of the mutation, and they make a point of showing that sound effect over and over again during the sequence. But you better believe that never comes up again, unless it was planned for the sequel series that he tries and fails to bait in the very last scene. I seriously doubt Aoki thought that far ahead, though. If I had to wager, I'd say he just doesn't know any other way to write an ending, because
if he's only done 2
every
shows.
episode of Chibi-8 sure does conclude in a roundabout fashion, if you catch my meaning. Actually, I meant to serve Pat Helen back, and every potentially dramatic moment is ruined by some character overreacting to it, and then another character overreacting to their overreaction, and then they say some combination of "oh no" and each other's names 3 or 4 times. How has that monster not killed them by now? But now that you mention it, a lot of those scenes do also cut to a to-be-continued screen about 3 seconds before the problem is very easily resolved. And if it's not resolved, there's a decent chance that whatever tragic, awful thing is implied to be impending will happen off-screen. Like the monk guy, who becomes Kathleen's surrogate father figure and is the only one she has left after her mom gets infected, locks her in a building so he can valiantly defend her from an army of Gibia, including her mutated mother, whom he was in love with, and all we get to see of that dramatic battle is its bloody aftermath surrounding his already cold corpse. Meanwhile, Adam the soldier gets this big dramatic sacrifice where he blows up a whole horde of Gibia in the highway they were running on with a remote C4 charge that could have saved him from getting infected in the first place if he just blew the bridge a little earlier, but whatever. And as he dies, they send him off with this sad montage of all 4 of the shots he was in, because he is literally a background extra. And that's not even the worst example of the series focusing on the wrong characters and key moments. The entire emotional through line of the series climax is the relationship between that generic Yakuza guy I mentioned earlier and his cop daughter, both of whom are introduced in episode 6 out of 12. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I haven't even told you the narrative through line of the series itself yet, which is that there's a doctor who's just about done with the vaccine for the apocalypse virus, and a bunch of tough dudes have to help him get to a research facility on the other side of the country to finish it off. You know, the generic zombie story.
Wow.
In standard formulaic zombie fashion, most of the series' minute-to-minute plot involves characters trying to go to a place or get a thing, only to be swarmed by surprise, at which point a very bad fight breaks out and there's a 60-40 chance that someone who doesn't matter will die.
Right, okay.
These
And then
battles
we're meant to
are
feel bad
usually
about it, and
bookended
it's
by scenes
suspenseful.
of
It's like, oh
characters
no.
sitting around talking about either the thing they're about to do, or the thing they just did, or else a Sengoku-era fanfic battle from their backstory. Very little of this advances the actual plot. They make you think that there might be some fated reason that all of these heroic warriors were reunited with each other and their favorite weapons in an unlikely present, perhaps connected in some way to these strange creatures. You know, some dope mysticism to complement
Like a
the martial arts
reason.
part of the package. But nope, it's just aliens.
what?
Spoilers for anyone who cares. So it turns out the Gibia virus came off an alien spaceship that crash landed in Venice, but some parts broke off of it and stayed in orbit, where Kathleen saw them and thought they were shooting stars, so she made a wish for everyone to be saved. And, okay, get this, the spaceship parts were made of mind-reactive metal that interpreted those thoughts as, I want you to time warp 3 random dudes from the Sengoku era into
Mind-reactive
Tokyo.
metal.
How can scrap metal do time travel? Don't ask.
It's alien.
We find this out because Doc's an alien, and the vaccine was actually just a cover for some yellow brain juice he was working on to revive the intelligence of his gibiated alien girlfriend, Yora. But literally, as he was putting the finishing touches on it, she crawls up out of the ocean to go find him, and of course the survivors all team up to kill her, like they have been doing
The whole time.
the whole series.
Right.
It's a real Romeo and Juliet moment, only incredibly stupid. So even though it's entirely his own fault for not telling them what was going on, Doc decides to take revenge on everyone by turning Yakuza Dad's Tonfa cop daughter into a Final Fantasy boss with his make-a-worse Gibia juice that happened to be a byproduct of the brain juice. And then he uses both juices on himself to become a palette swap of that Final Fantasy boss, only it can talk, which results in 2 really bad fights. Like, fucking, wow.
Oh god.
Just look at this. I have no words. Then, at the very end, Samurai gets stung. Maybe. But if he's not stung, Ninja Lancer and Girl are fucking off to China, and he's free to follow a GPS transponder, which he knows how to use because... to find them in the sequel. Though it is awful presumptuous to think they're getting one, considering there's nothing I can do to roast this anime harder than just describing what happens in it. Then again, Handshaker's got a sequel, so if there's a will, there may be a way. Look, Ryo Aoki is probably a perfectly nice guy. I don't want to presume
Just hasn't got much experience.
about someone I don't know, but my brain does it anyway without my permission, and this really strikes me as a prime example of an idea guy who thinks that coming up with a neat high concept is the same thing as writing a good, original, impactful story with characters and a plot. It is not. Plots are not just reasons for action figures to bang into each other, especially not when you can't even make the action figures look good. Please, whoever allowed this anime to happen, don't make the same mistake twice.
Don't do it again.
Even if you're Ryo Aoki's friend, especially if you're his friend, you would be doing him and the rest of the world a huge favor if you just told him to practice a little bit before he tries.
Try a little better. Try a little harder.
Please. These bad anime lists are always an excruciating experience, but this wasn't even fun bad. You could have squeezed the entire plot and all of the characters from this 5-hour TV show into a tight 90-minute movie, and it still would have felt a little light on content. I was so fucking bored. It took me days to get through this show because I felt so exhausted after a couple of episodes.
Those look
and
so
while killing your
awful.
harshest critics through sheer bloody attrition is a legitimate strategy, I guess, you could also just not, please. Or I guess I could just stop subjecting myself to bad anime and try to be happy.
Try to be happy by not watching bad anime.
I'm Jeff 2, professional shitbag.
Signing
See
out.
you next year.
From my mother's basement. And they do sound like some goddamn awful anime. I think it's funny that the only one I actually attempted to watch was Shadowverse, and I did stop watching that because that was awful. And I'm glad that made the list. It proves that I was correct in stopping watching that. Those other anime do look god awful. I'm glad I've not experienced them. Guess that's that for 2020. So thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos, and I'll see you guys. Next year.